Hey everyone, Coach Sai here. Welcome to Nutrition 101. So we get a ton of questions about best practice or just more of a holistic understanding on nutrition and what it all entails and what can we do to set each individual up for success. So we thought making a video like this would help all of our clientele and maybe some of you who are not our clientele understand what are the principles that's gonna allow me to have as much success as possible when it comes to my training and my nutrition. So let's start out by talking about the 3 macros. So most people have heard of these, which is our protein, our fat, and our carbs. So everything you eat, not everything, but most things you eat are gonna be comprised of those 3 macronutrients. And I want to just touch on that really quick because a lot of times what we see in kind of like mainstream media, especially in regards to fitness and wellness, is all these different nutritional approaches with diets, right? So maybe it's like a keto diet or a Whole30 or an Atkins or whatever it is. Just understand that a lot of that is really about portion control, because most of us just go through our day-to-day eating and we don't pay any attention to what we're eating in terms of the macro and even the quantity of eating. So especially like in America, as over the last 30 years, the average plate size in a household has gone up significantly, and most people fill their plate full with food. So you have no clue about your portion control. So a lot of these, we want to make it obvious that a lot of these diets that people will do that they have a lot of success with is due to like the portion control or that behavior change that comes when you're on some sort of diet, because you start to become aware of what you're doing. And typically, especially with most things in life, what you measure changes. So if you're tracking that, you'll start to see some success over a period of time. And another really common piece of that is the challenges that you'll see. So like the one going around right now that's extremely popular is the 75 hard. So a ton of people that don't do a lot of exercise to begin with, and then they definitely don't track the nutrition. Now you're getting everything kind of packaged together. Bam, it's like a win-win for success. It makes a lot of sense on why people are having success, because 1, you're training, you're exercising, and 2, you're paying somewhat close attention to your food intake. Okay, now we'll elaborate in just a second on those macronutrients and sources of them and some nutrient timing and those types of things, but I want to talk about the phases. So when I say phases, what I mean by that is like a maintenance phase, a mass gaining phase, or a weight loss phase, or a cut phase. So everyone has what's called a basal metabolic rate, and that is the energy that's required to sustain your life. So if you literally just sit on a couch, do absolutely nothing, technically it would be laying in your bed on your back, but if you do absolutely nothing, there's a certain amount of calories that you have to expend day in and day out just to be able to survive. Okay, so when you couple your daily activity, like taking care of the kids, going to work, exercising, those types of things, that number gets bumped up because you're expending energy to do that. So if I'm on a maintenance phase, so for simple math, let's just say my basal metabolic rate is 1,500 calories per day. And then due to my life, I'm relatively sedentary, I work an office job, I exercise maybe twice a week. Let's say that 500 calories per day is the excess that I need for maintenance. So that would be 2,000 calories per day. So if I eat above 2,000 calories per day, I'm going to gain weight. If I eat below 2,000 calories per day, I'm going to lose weight. It is literally that simple. There is no diet that's a fad diet that actually creates better success than others. It's simply calories in, calories out. Now, you may feel better doing a certain type, and that's fine, and that may be due to a whole bunch of different things. But understand that if you want to simplify this down, it's calories in and calories out. That is it. So if you're an athlete that's looking to put on muscle, if you consume more calories than you burn, or you're above that 2,000, you're going to gain weight. If you're a middle-aged adult that's looking to lose weight, if you burn more calories than you consume, you're going to lose weight. Okay, so that's why I think it's really important to understand that, to me, a holistic diet, meaning one that's balanced in your protein, your fats, and your carbs, is much more sustainable and it's much more enjoyable. And that kind of feeds into the next touch point, which I wanted to talk about, flexible dieting. So a lot of times we'll have people that'll come in and they're super motivated and they're just riding this wave of motivation. In 12 weeks, I'm gonna drop X number of pounds, I'm gonna drop a certain percent of body fat because I'm going on a beach vacation and I wanna look good in a bikini. What about the rest of the year? You don't wanna maintain all that hard work that you've put in. And that's what we see a ton of, is just this roller coaster approach of people putting on muscle, losing fat, and then they build to this important time, and then everything just goes downhill because it's this all or none approach. And they make it this kind of like reward mechanism to where they can't eat the things that they enjoy. And then it's just kind of like dangling that meat out in front of you, so to speak. And when your success comes, or you get to where you want to, then comes this like crash diet to where you just eat whatever you want, do whatever you want. All of these things are not set up on a stable foundation. So the flexible dieting essentially allows you to pay attention to your protein, your fats, and your carbs. So if you're someone who does enjoy some sort of sweet, you figure out a way to layer that in. Because I can tell you right now, if you are eating foods on a more frequent basis that you really, really like, you're much less likely to consume a crap load of them on a Saturday night because you've been eating it daily. Hopefully that makes sense. So the 90-10 rule is typically what we follow, which is 90% of your meals need to be pretty close in terms of your protein, your fats, and your carb goals. And then occasionally you can splurge. Now the beauty with flexible dieting is if you like, say like for me, I really like Reese's, the candy bar. So like if I want a Reese's, I can incorporate that into my macros, and that still is counted toward my 90% because I'm taking the caloric content of that Reese's and I'm incorporating it into my calories for the day. And that may be confusing for some, but we typically expand upon this with one-on-one meetings and some counseling stuff that we do. So then the question becomes like nutrient timing. Everyone's got all these questions about nutrient timing. I want to pump the brakes on that because if you're not someone that is actively eating the correct amount of protein, fats, and carbs, really nutrient timing is not going to matter that much to you. The most important piece is that you are consuming the correct caloric intake relative to your goal. So going back to that 2,000 calories example, if you want maintenance, you need to be eating 2,000 calories per day. If you're somebody that's really concerned about nutrient timing and you're looking for maintenance and you're eating 2,500 calories a day, you're simply wasting your time. That nutrient timing does not mean anything. Now, if you're 100% dialed, say you're somebody that wants to be in a cut and you're looking to lose a pound a week, which is really safe and typically advisable for most body sizes, then you're going to be in a deficit of 500 calories per day, right? So that person, they can pay attention to nutrient timing if you want to get real scientific with it. And how we advise people is a really simple rule is roughly 50% of your daily intake for your carbs can fall around the training window. So maybe before training, you have 15% of your total carb content for the day. And then after training, you have 35%, right? And those two together are going to make up 50. If you want to go a little bit further, you can have like a simple and a complex carb, which I'm not going to dive into. If you want to pursue that, you can just simply do a Google search. You'll get a bunch of information on the difference between the two carb types. Okay, this brings me to sources. Everyone wants to know, what should I eat, right? Well, that's going to vary, because what if you are someone that wants to be on a little bit of a higher carb diet or a lower carb diet? There's ways that we can play with it, but we typically try to encourage people to have both worlds. And that we essentially do a version of our own carb cycling with a lot of people, because then you get a high carb day and you get a high fat day. And that allows you to eat a huge variety of foods, which makes it not nearly as boring. Is it a little harder to learn at first? Absolutely, but the variety goes through the roof. So protein, pretty simple. So you got your beef, you got chicken, you got different types of fish, right? We got like salmon versus like cod with different fat contents. And then we have eggs, egg whites, turkey, tilapia, and then like all your protein powders and bars and stuff like that. You gotta be careful with the bars because of the fat and carb content. The other examples are much better in terms of just pure protein. And then fats, we got rice, we got potato, sweet potato, yam, oats, quinoa, fruit, beans. Obviously this list is not all inclusive, it goes beyond. And then fats, avocado, cheese, olive oil, coconut oil, nuts, and then the yolk within the egg, because that's a lot of fat within a single egg. So you've heard me talk a lot about tracking, and a lot of you are probably wondering, like, how do I track this? So really there's two ways. The one that gives you the best success is going to be doing macro tracking. Now this is the one that often stresses people out, overwhelms people. They get really confused about how to do it, but you're simply using some sort of technology like MyFitnessPal that allows you to input your food for the day, and it literally spits out, you know, the amount of protein, fats, and carbs that are in each meal that you're eating relative to how much you should be consuming for the entire day. The simpler rule, which is where we have most people start, is our hand size. So obviously everyone's hand's a different size, but if I'm trying to do protein, I can just simply look at my palm. So roughly the palm of my hand is 20 to 30 grams of protein. So if you have a smaller hand, it's gonna be closer to 20. If you have a bigger hand, it's gonna be closer to 30. Don't get too caught up on the relative thickness, right? I get people that ask that question, is like, well, what if it's a big heaping? Obviously that's gonna be way more than 20 or 30 grams. So you're just looking for like a relative size to your palm. And then for fruit, that's a carb source. So be mindful of, it's roughly like a palm, or a fist, excuse me, is gonna be 20 to 30 grams of carbs relative to a veggie. And like, when I say veggies, you're trying to eat things that are not too starchy, so more of like leafy veggies that aren't gonna have a lot of carb content. And the veggies are gonna be about a fist. So one full fist is gonna equate to about a cup of vegetables, and that's gonna be lower on the carb content. And these are more volume type foods too that will help fill you up, and I'm gonna touch on that in just a second. And then going back to that carb with the fruit, when I said, you know, like one palm or one cup, right? So that's essentially if I take my hand and I make a cup, 20 to 30 grams of carbs, very similar to the protein, and that falls into that carb list that I just read off a couple seconds back. And then fat. So one thumb, if I'm measuring up from the second joint of my thumb all the way to the top, that's gonna be about 7 to 12 grams of fat relative to your hand size. So going back to that nutrient part where we're talking about the flexible dieting, I think it's really important that you understand that, yeah, you can have candy and sweets and stuff like that, but those are very, very micronutrient deficient foods that are very caloric dense, meaning there's lots of fats, lots of carbs, and they don't fill you up. So you blow a lot of your calories right up front. And this is the problem that we see with a ton of people that are struggling with weight, is they're eating foods that are micronutrient deficient, and they are very caloric dense, meaning they don't get full. So they eat more until they're full. Next thing you know, you're in this huge calorie surplus. So eating foods that are very micronutrient dense is gonna fill you up and lead to better success, because it's gonna fall within your caloric goals for the day. So a simple way to think about that is when you go to the grocery store, whatever you can, like whatever is around the edge or outer edge of the grocery store is gonna be typically whole foods. So whatever you could kill or pick or grow yourself is essentially what you should be eating. And those are gonna be the foods that are gonna be like more like the whole food approach. So to summarize, protein, fats, and carbs are our 3 macronutrients. And the biggest piece that we want you all to start doing is just being aware of what you're eating, looking at labels, starting to understand what goes in your mouth and in relation to your goals. Are you someone that's trying to maintain? Are you someone that's trying to lose? Are you someone that's trying to gain? Because what you're gonna put in is gonna be relative to those goals. When in doubt, always consume your protein, because protein is king and everything else is kind of there to augment that. Hopefully this video was helpful. If you have any questions, reach out.